Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Hello, party people. I am so excited to be recording this podcast episode with you this week. And one of the biggest reasons I'm excited is because I'm able to record this podcast episode. My poor assistants are getting this recording just a few days before it gets released. And you know why? I got so sick over the holidays that I completely lost my voice and was like whispering, and it was insane. Like, if any of my clients are listening to this, they can attest to the 10 days, believe it or not, where I couldn't talk. And actually, I gotta say, it was a pretty interesting experience. It was so interesting. God, I listened to I watched people kind of like trying to figure out what to do with the fact that I was whispering like this. And that's the only kind of talking I could do. And it was so interesting. Like, some people would start whispering back to me, even though, like, oh, we're telling a secret. Okay, here. I'll whisper too. It's like really cute. I had other people that were like backing away from me because they're like, oh, you must be deathly ill, which I really wasn't. I just had laryngitis and completely lost my voice. By the time I couldn't talk anymore, I had long since stopped being contagious. And then some people, like my daughter, oh my gosh, she was the most fascinating. I felt like I could have like spent an hour just psychoanalyzing this one sentence that she said, where every time that I was talking, she was like, I feel like you guys are gossiping about me. And I literally would just be like talking to my husband, like, what are we going to have for dinner? But because I was saying, what are we going to have for dinner? She was like, what are they saying about me? And I was like, it is really interesting. Of all the people that I've had to whisper around for the last like week, you're the only one who interprets it as people are talking bad about you. And I really think that's interesting. Let's talk about that. And she did for a minute. And then she's like, yeah, mom, shut up. Let's not turn every single moment into like your armchair psychology or whatever, which fair, that is fair. But I mean, come on, you can't, that's like way too juicy of a low hanging fruit for me. I'm not going to pass it up. So, anyway, fascinating experience for me of like, it is so much effort for me to be heard. I started thinking about like, well, what was I going to say that was actually worth expressing? Because like, if all I'm saying is like my favorite color is purple, you know, does that so important that I need to repeat it like 6 times and get everyone to stop what they're doing and tune into me just so they can hear that my favorite color is purple? Like, it's not worth it. So I just started really being very thoughtful and economical with like my words, with what I kept to myself. It turns out a lot of the stuff I say out loud are actually inside thoughts, friend. So it was just really interesting experience, and being more of in this like observational role because I couldn't be like as super involved in everything. So I highly recommend Losing Your Voice, everybody. It's a really kind of interesting experience. It made me start thinking about going on a silent retreat or something like that. Anyway, I am grateful to have my voice back and be like able to even record this episode for you all today. And what we're going to talk about today is the sense of impatience or urgency that often comes to personal growth work, which, of course, we wouldn't want, right? We would want to be thinking, like, oh, I'm in this process, trust the process. We talk all the time about slowing down and having acceptance and, all of this stuff. Can we do that? Well, frankly, not sometimes, no, because I'm going to tell you a little story from the retreat this year, actually. Or not this year now, because it's 2026, the 2025 retreat, where this concept really came out. And I'm going to explain it to you also in the context of internal family systems, because that was really, really beautiful sort of illustration. So my confession for you all this week is that I am super impatient person. As an Enneatype type 1, that's the gut type, the instinctual triad of the Enneagram. I am absolutely driven by just like, okay, I figured it out. Let's go. Let's take action. That instinctual triad of the Enneagram is the doing triad. And coincidentally, the story I'm about to tell you is with also a mom who's an Enneatype type 1. So we ones and the other two parts of this triad are the eights and the nines. But I would say ones and eights most of all are super action taking. Um, so, we get to this place of like, why isn't this already done? I already decided. I already figured it out. I figured out the problem. Let's fix it, that kind of thing. And that happens to me all the time. It's absolutely true. Like a really great example, kind of silly example, but we've got two kiddos in college now, which when our first kiddo left the nest, we were bursting at the seams. So it was like not a moment too soon, frankly. My youngest kid was still sleeping in a baby nursery attached to my bedroom. So, having this oldest kid leave the nest meant that we could finally move our youngest kiddo into his own room, like where it made sense for him to be, and then like turn the room that he had vacated, this nursery, into an office space, which you'd think would be for me, but it isn't. It's for my husband. So, but don't get me started on that rabbit hole. Anyway, second kiddo leaves the nest, and it's not no longer this like sense of like, oh my gosh, we're bursting at the seams, but still definitely felt like we need to do something with this room. And instead of just kind of like being patient and kind of seeing like, well, let's see how we use the space and what makes the most sense for our family, that wasn't my approach. It was like, I got to do this now. I got to figure this out now. And even though I didn't. And I made in my opinion, a pretty, unfortunate parenting decision, which is I told my daughter, like, do you want to move down into this empty room that your brother was in? And then, and then I'm going to move your other brother into your room. And then I'm going to turn his room into my office and blah, 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 blah. And she got all excited about it. She started thinking about how much bigger this room was going to be that she's going to have and blah, blah, blah. A couple of weeks go by and I'm realizing like actually this doesn't make any sense at all. Like we need this guest space. We've used it like 3 times in the last 3 weeks for other reasons. Like I I I took action too soon. I spoke too soon. And then I had to have like a really tricky conversation with my daughter where I basically said, like, I made a mistake. Like I spoke too soon. Here are all the reasons why we don't actually want you to move into the space. And she was really upset and she had every right to be. I really just like kind of jerked her around with like, at first she didn't even want to move. Then she kind of got on board with moving. And then I was like, just kidding, you're not moving. I do that kind of stuff. And I do that stuff with my own personal progress too. Like if I'm thinking about getting better at meditation or I'm thinking about, realizing like some way that I'm approaching a relationship issue and I want to just once I figured it out, it's like, okay, so now I'm going to be better. And I think this happens a ton with parenting. It happens in all lots of arenas too. Like when I do like corporate coaching or career coaching, I'll watch my client have this realization of like, oh, I'm talking to my coworker in a way that's like totally counterproductive. I'm going to do it this new way starting tomorrow. Have to, right? With parenting, we even sometimes give even more urgency. Not all of us feel this way, but a lot of parents feel like, the stakes are too high. We need to fix this like yesterday. We don't have the luxury of having some sort of slow and steady approach to being good parents. We need to have this figured out ASAP. Like this kid deserves the childhood I'm supposed to be giving him right now. And if I don't, flip that switch right now, I'm failing him. And so as soon as we have this realization of like where we're falling short or how things quote unquote should be, we want it to be that way right away. And that's exactly the conversation, such a beautiful conversation that I had um with one of the moms who came to the retreat in 2025. We had spent like this whole weekend working on internal family systems was the focus or one of the big focuses of the retreat in 2025. And so we had spent this whole week or weekend, exploring, internal family systems and learning how it works and learning how to work with our parts and all of that good stuff. And if you don't know what internal family systems is, go back and listen to like a million episodes that I've recorded explaining IFS. But all you need to know for purposes of today's conversation is that it's just a way of identifying like these different aspects of ourselves and where they come from, what they need, what they're trying to do for us, and interacting with them in a way that helps them sort of calm down and let us, as the adults in the room, be the leader of our bodies and our choices and our emotions and stuff like that, versus these little aspects of us that kind of come in and hijack the situation when they get activated. So this mom was learning, all this stuff about how to interact with her parts more healthily. And she was starting to really see a pattern. So her big goal was, she has a really challenging kiddo who tends to fly off the handle and get dysregulated. And what her real goal was to like learn how to stay calm and regulated when her son was dysregulated. And she was, through all the IFS work that we were doing, kind of recognizing like, oh, okay, so there's a part of me that gets activated, actually several parts in her case, that gets activated when my kid is upset and sort of hijacks my behavior. And now and then I lose my temper when he's having a meltdown. And then afterwards, I have the second part that comes in and beats me up for having lost my temper. And so, I get it now. I see it. And we also had, so as we're starting to see this stuff, we're also learning how to like, okay, well, what do you do with that information that you now see? Well, IFS says those parts deserve our attention. They need healing and time from us. And so we got to practice that a little bit during the retreat. And, and she got to experience what it was like for her to go in and actually be with that part of her that loses it when her son has a meltdown. And she got to spend some time and actually like be with and understand that part of her that beats herself up after she loses her temper. And she could even feel those parts kind of like, just kind of settling down and not being quite so activated, not quite so likely to hijack her, in the moment and all of that stuff. But it was the last day of the retreat, and she kind of pulled me aside and was like, listen, I see what's going on. I see that if I spend time with these parts, my behavior is going to be better and things are going to calm down. But I'm also seeing that in order for these parts not to take over, they need time and attention from me. And I feel like I just don't have that kind of time. Like, what do you do when you need to really, like, quote unquote, fix your parenting like yesterday, and it makes perfect sense, like, especially when we're talking about parenting, even though this kind of challenge or this predicament comes up in so many other arenas as well. But like, you know, our kids deserve the parents they need us to be, and they deserve that now. So the suggestion that we undertake this process that doesn't result in immediate improvement, that doesn't result in immediate change in your parenting, it can easily feel like a luxury that we really just can't afford. There's that sense of urgency coming in, this idea of like, time is short. I need to do this immediately. Um, so we decided to like say, okay, well, let's put our money where our mouth is. We've been doing IFS this whole weekend. Let's look at this situation through the lens of IFS. What if this feeling of urgency that you're having is another part? So you've got the part that, loses your temper when your kid has a meltdown. You have the part that beats you up afterwards because you feel ashamed of losing your temper. And now we also have this third part that's saying, like, come on, hurry up, be better, be good now. Don't slow down and do all this, mumbo jumbo stuff. Be now, the parent you're supposed to be, do it now or never, basically. And also, you could also see how these different parts almost like team up or collude in these moments. Like if you have this sense of urgency that's coming from one of your parts saying, like, you have to do it now, you have to be good now, there's no wiggle room. Well, you can imagine that when your kid is dysregulated and throwing a tantrum, that part that leads her to lose her temper and that part that's saying, hurry, better, do it now, urgent, those two parts are going to team up to like create, an epic meltdown in mom even quicker. Or like let's talk about like how that urgency part could collude with the beating yourself up part. Like you're already beating yourself up for having lost your temper or not being the parent that you think you were supposed to be for your kid and blah 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 blah. This urgency part is going to come along for the ride in that one for sure, where it's like, okay, and on top of it, you're behind. That's another thing you can beat yourself up for, is that this is taking too long, right? So as she was able to start to think about like, okay, well, I'm going to just think about this like sense of hurry, impatience, urgency as a part, she was able to see that there is a beautiful benevolent intent for this part, just like every one of our parts has a benevolent intent, that this, in some ways, that urgency is a beautiful gift because it helps her take her parenting seriously. It helps her invest time and money even into figuring out parenting. And it helps her notice some of her unhelpful habits. So it's like, it's really that urgency. It's really, what is it saying is like, this is important. It's super important. It's the most important thing ever. That's really great. Like as a child, I would love it if my parents had a part of them that said parenting was really important. Um, but when that part takes over the system, it also ends up sabotaging her because it makes her rush through things that could have made a really huge difference in her parenting if she had taken her time. It also makes her like abandon effective and slow and steady approaches to parenting and instead try these like sort of quick fix ideas, these knee jerk reactions that repeatedly fail. I mean, you could just really say it super simply. When you have somebody saying, hurry, 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 hurry in your ear, I mean, you get dysregulated and then you're not responding, you're reacting. You're just in a total reactive, like panic mode. Just imagine if you just had like a little voice in your head, which you probably do sometimes have this voice in your head saying, hurry, 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 hurry. We're running out of time. That doesn't lend us to any capacity to being present, really paying attention and observing what's going on with ourselves and our kid, all these things, right? So that feeling of urgency, when she was able to like kind of see like, okay, so I have this like urgent part, this like rushing part. Okay. And now I can also see that that part that is trying to help me improve my parenting is actually having the opposite effect. It's keeping me stuck in this like reactive parenting that I'm trying to get away from, right? So, a couple of things I want to highlight here. First of all, this is the power of internal family systems, like being able to actually parse out, oh, this is what's going on inside of me, and even get very specific and discrete. Like, okay, so here's one aspect of me is saying this, another aspect is saying that, a third aspect is doing this. And I can see how all of those aspects work together. And I can see how all of those aspects lead to this outcome that I'm experiencing. And not only does IFS help you understand that and kind of create this map of what's going on inside of you, it also gives you the tools to do something about it, to say, okay, so I'm actually going to go inside right now and interact with that part. Urgent part. Tell me what is so urgent and tell me what's so important right now that I need to do this right now, and not have an argument with that part, not devalue or invalidate that part's point of view, but to actually listen and be with that part and just even find a sense of compassion, appreciation, openness, acceptance, or even just neutrality sometimes toward that part that might, you know, feel it's easy to feel frustrated toward because it's, you can see how it's sabotaging you. IFS teaches us to do the opposite, to actually just be with ourselves in all of our parts and share that sort of self energy with each of those parts so that it can kind of, feel a little just, a little less traumatic, a little less panicked, a little less urgent. So, I just love to underscore these moments where IFS makes such a tangible difference in people's lives. And this mom now has tools to kind of care for her system so that all of those parts can soften, and she doesn't have to force herself to be a good mom through panic and self-criticism, which is what her system has been conditioned to be doing this whole time. Instead, she can take care of that urgent part. She can take care of that beating yourself up like inner critic part, so that neither of them hijack her efforts to just be with her son in a really calm, regulated way when he is upset. So that's one thing that I want to highlight here. The other thing I want to highlight is just that sense of urgency. It's so normal. We all have that like hurry, hurry, hurry part. And we know, all of us, self-care junkies or self-improvement junkies that listen to this podcast and are trying to like, improve ourselves and grow and become better versions of ourselves. Like we know that the real key to lasting change is patience. It really is, right? It's about accepting where we are right now, accepting that we're not going to be here forever. So if we're in a great place, like it's not going to last, where we're going to go astray and then we just have to come back, accepting that, this process, we're part of a process, that it is a process. It's not a switch that we can flip. Having awareness in terms of like understanding what's going on inside of you, it's incredible. It's just huge, but it's the beginning. And the doing something about what you have finally gained awareness of takes time. And even as you hear me sort of like talk about this, you can even hear the pace of my voice slowing down. That feeling of my kid needs me to do right by them right this minute, or I need to really level up in my job right now, or, you know, uh, I need to address this conflict that's just happened between me and my family member yesterday, right? Or I need to lose this weight and, today. Like anything that is about improvement of ourselves, it's incremental, it's slow. And that sense of urgency is a really great way for us to stay stuck. That sense of hurry, 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 it's not self energy. It's a part of our ego. It's a part. And so can we interact with that part in a loving way? Can we interact with that part in a way that helps it to just feel calmer and step to the side, not go away? Now we're never going to eradicate our parts. That's not the goal. It's just being able to have a conversation with that part that's like, I totally hear you. Like, I want to do this as quickly as possible too. We both have the same goal, which is for me to be, at the next level in whatever I'm doing. And it's going to be a slow process, which I know is uncomfortable for you. What do you need from me, urgent part, so that you can be patient and stand to the side while I do this thing at the pace that it has to be done at, even though it's slower than we wish it would be. And that is a completely different conversation than, shut up, urgent part. I gotta be quiet and still and patient. So shut up, like, I don't know if that's lending me to feeling quiet and still and patient, right? Um, or conversely, just being like, you're right. We have to do this fast. So starting right now, I'm just going to be Zen mom or woke coworker or, the bigger person in this conflict with my relative or whatever. You can't rush it. And so we have this part that wants to rush, but rushing actually makes it take longer. What do we do about that? Well, it's not something you can just put a lid on. You can use IFS, you can use these tools to actually go in and be with that part of you that wants to rush and be understanding. It makes perfect sense that that part wants to rush, of course. So I hope all of that is landing with you. I hope you're starting to see how, if you haven't already, how all of the things that we talk about on this podcast extend so far beyond parenting. even though this podcast is called Confessions of a Parent Coach, I think it's actually would be a beautiful thing and a helpful thing for every human on the planet to explore the concepts that we talk about here. And so you can see how this like feeling of rushing and urgency, it can show up around any goal that we have, anything that we're working on. And if all of this stuff is landing with you, if you're feeling like, yes, I totally see it, and yet still I am grinding my gears and not actually creating the change that I can kind of see on the horizon every time I listen to this podcast episode, set up that free discovery call with me. Let's do a consultation and tell me what is the thing that you want to work on, what makes it feel like maybe the stuff that I talk about here is the key to getting there, and what it looks like for us to work together and really help you get to that finish line, not in a rushed way, not in an impatient way, in the way that's actually going to get you there. I hope that's helpful for you. I can't wait to talk to you again next week. Go ahead and book that discovery call for yourself, and I will talk to you again. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.